because I know that they don't believe God is real because of this intentional training that happened in the public school system.
Candace Owens tells Nick Cannon that there's a conspiracy against God.
You speak on, and you do it in such a fearless way. How do you get away with that?
Well, the first thing is I know enough about history to know that if they want to kill you, the Secret Service ain't going to stop them. That's the first part. You know what I mean? If that was a thing, then JFK would be alive, right? If that was a thing, Trump wouldn't have gotten shot. And so it's almost to me, the security part is vanity for other people. It doesn't actually make a difference.
Right off the bat, starting off with some heat, I guess we should expect nothing less from Candace Owens. She's not one to hold back. Considering recent events, it's tough to argue otherwise. Not only did someone successfully hit Donald Trump, but somehow they let someone else get close enough to try it again. It hasn't been a good year for the Secret Service, at least not publicly. Now, I don't know enough about the JFK situation to really say, but she says some very interesting things as the conversation goes on.
But the second thing is, I have faith in God. I know God is real. So there is this understanding that I'm always operating with, that this is not it. And I feel sad for people that don't know that God is real, because I know that they don't believe God is real because of this intentional training that happened in the public school system. It's why your grandparents were faithful.
She's essentially saying that God is the only security that she needs. This is admirable, but God also tells us to be wise as doves. Jesus tells us in the scripture to be shrewd as serpents, wise as doves. Sometimes I think people like to say that they're being treated a certain way because of their faith in God. But in reality, it has more to do with how you act, what you say, or what you do. It's a hot take to say this about public school. I do think that the secularization of schools was intentionally done to indoctrinate kids not to believe in God. This is ironic, considering that this is one of the things they accuse religious people of doing. For years, they would accuse religious people, Christians, about indoctrinating their kids, but then they would turn around and did the same thing. You could argue that they were doing this at the same time. I remember a few years ago, when it was shown that those images that they showed you in the biology textbooks depicting the process of an animal developing, right, starting from, like, I guess you could say, like the fetus stage and maturing into the actual animal, trying to say that the same process that you see for humans is the same process that you see in animals. But then we found out that those are actually false. This false rift that we often see between science and faith is largely due to what they teach in school. According to some of the latest Barna research, teenagers, students, right? I think middle school, high school, one of the reasons they mentioned for maybe having a lack of faith or a reduced level of faith in God is because they think that science and faith are at odds. And they get this idea predominantly from public schools.
Going back to Tucker Carlson clip where he's like, don't you think it's weird that since the dawn of humanity, everybody knew that spiritual forces were at play, goodness and evil were at play, every civilization, and then suddenly post-World War II in the West, we were like, no, God's not real. And they started training you to believe in yourself. And that gets into all types of satanic religions that want to drive you towards humanism. They want that to be the ultimate faith, to place your faith in humans, to place your faith in science, and to not believe in God, like literally to not believe in God.
Since the beginning of civilization, it was taken for granted that spiritual forces were at work. But now all of a sudden, we want to say that all those previous civilizations were wrong. This goes back to what the Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. We have started to see this view against immaterial things start to change. We've been hearing about NDEs, near-death experiences, and OBs, out-of-body experiences, for some time. But when you have professors and scholars also saying this, it makes people start to wonder. It forces you to reconsider. This push toward believing in yourself sounded good for a moment, and it was all the rage for a while. But as time has gone on, people have started to realize how futile this mentality really is. Believing in yourself can only do so much. You need to believe in something outside of yourself, something that is constant, something that doesn't change, like God. When people place their faith in other humans, we've seen how this plays out before, right? Here in America, we don't have to look that far back. Think about all those people that were all in on Trump being reelected and how distraught they were after. Fast forward to now, and we have essentially seen the same thing with other people putting their trust in the Democratic Party. Placing your faith in other humans will always let you down. Psalm 118, verse 8. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man.
people, it's funny to me because they will be like, I don't believe in God, like, and they think it's a rational position to have, but these will be the same people that believe so much in government. Like, atheists are the most faithful people in the entire world. They will, like what I'm saying, hopping on one foot for COVID,
Right.
trying to stay alive. They don't ask any questions, roll up their sleeve, get a vaccine. I'm like, bro, you got faith. It's just in humans, like, you know,
Right.
in the ultimate form, scientism. And they've realized that, and they know that they can control you. I mean, the stuff that you see people doing, it should make you very aware that they have faith, that there is no such thing as atheism. There's
Right.
just faith
Well,
in man.
Yeah.
Atheists just can't catch a break right now. First, Ayan Hersey Ali says that they are more close-minded than Christians. And now, Candace says they have the most faith. I mean, taking L's left and right. The whole thing with the stick was a little wild. Let's be honest. They fast-tracked this thing and then told people it was safe and effective, only to have to turn around shortly after and start walking some of those claims back. Then we found out that the whole origin story was intentionally kept from people. Unfortunately, this kind of stuff gives people like Candace more credibility.
Look at people who believe in God and spirituality as kooks and also slaves to, oh, you're just going to go with these traditional rituals that have been placed in books and theories that really are based off of allegories. I'd rather go based off of scientific evidence of things that have been proven.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I think that they probably should know that the Enlightenment was not enlightened. It was the darkening of mankind. The Dark Ages were not dark. They were actually an age of tremendous Christian enlightenment, and all of that stuff has been intentionally buried, and they are very much focused moving the Bible out of the classroom. It used to be taught. And
who are these people that Nick is referring to? Again, this whole idea that science and faith are at odds with one another is just not true. Most of the advances we've seen in science were largely due to men of faith, men who believed that God had ordered the world in a way where science was possible. In the conversation between Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins, Richard even recognizes this as being the case. Science, as we know it, arose in a Christian society, right? We have science because of the Christian culture that was there that allowed science to grow and to become what it is now. Jordan Peterson in the conversation makes a great point. Why is it that science didn't arise over there in China or some other country around this time? Why did it arise in Europe that was heavily influenced by Christianity? Why was that? That's a question that needs to be answered and a question that has to be accounted for. We should look at scientific evidence whenever possible, but let's also remember that science is not the only way that we can know things. This goes back to scientism that was brought up earlier, right? Scientism is this idea basically that science is the only way that we can know things. That just isn't true. That statement itself cannot be proven scientifically. Now, she mentions the Bible being taught in the classroom. Listen, I think some people mean well when they say this, but you also have to keep in mind, if we're going to be teaching the Bible in public schools, are we also going to allow for other religious texts to be taught in public schools, right? And that's just kind of what's happening in Texas now. Everybody's kind of celebrating this shift in, I think, one of the districts there. But if you read, farther in that, I guess, proposal, you see that this allows for other religious texts to be taught as well.
20 years of his life to present to the public. You have to learn it. It's scary, but you have to confront it. But don't be scared also, because in the end, goodness does win. And that's where just the spirit of Christ comes in. Like, I know how this story ends. These people are evil. These people are demonic. These people are poisoning you. They are poisoning your children. They are poisoning your psychology every day. They have poisoned Black music. Is also what I want to say. That was my instinct. I was like, this is not Black music. Why am I hearing what sounds demonic coming out of people's mouths and what they're speaking about? And some artists have spoken out about the fact that they're being told to produce demonic music.
Before we get to this point in the conversation, she says some wild stuff, right? So I'm not co-signing everything she says in the conversation. Just want to make sure I make that clear. That being said, for us as Christians, this is a great reminder. We know who wins. We know how the story ends. This reminds me of something you often hear preachers say. We don't fight for victory, we fight from victory. Revelation 17, verse 14. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. for he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. In the clip here, she talks about the influence when it comes to music, right? How did we go from music like Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston to some of the new artists that we have today? And I think she raises a good point. That's a valid point, right? What happened to this music that was richer, that had deeper meaning, right? That the lyrics were really speaking to you. How did we shift from that to this? Now I would argue that some of that's just what's being promoted and pushed, right? That's what's kind of in your face. This kind of music is still there. It's just a little harder to find. It's ironic that you'll hear people defend certain artists, right? Big name artists who are essentially telling you to do things that harm your community, that are telling you to do things that aren't really uplifting other people around you. Why are you defending them, right? Why are you trying to promote them or advocate for them? That seems to be contradictory to what your beliefs, or at least to what your claim to your beliefs are. There are also some Christians get caught up in this, right? They want to defend some of these secular artists. Oh no, you're missing the full meaning. You're missing what the context is. There might be a place for that, but when you see repeatedly over and over again that what they're saying is not uplifting other people, that is downright demonic, right? That is promoting, causing harm to other people. How can you still defend this? That doesn't make any sense.
When we're scared or when we're confused. And a lot of what I hear you saying is that it's not rooted in what we would deem as factual. Like you're an avid reader like me. Like I'll read anything and try to understand it, but it's also like, all right, well, show me the evidence, which normally is like science, of that there are people controlling us through our music. Now, as a faith, based individual and someone I truly believe in spiritual warfare, I at least for my own psyche, I can say, okay, I see what's happening in black music and in hip hop. I don't think there's a secret meeting going on that, and I've even heard about the secret meeting. I'm like, why? I want to know who was in those meetings that they were saying, I need you to say all of the horrible things about black men and black women. I need you to put satanic influences into songs and signs and symbolism. Like, to me, that is an energy that, or a spirit that can come upon people to make you want to do that, especially based off of their circumstances.
So Nick says that he wants to see evidence that artists are being told to say these kinds of things, to promote these kinds of values in their music. I mean, I think one of the clearest examples of this is, what do you hear being played most of the time? It's the music that's advocating these kinds of values, that's promoting these kinds of things. I think it seems to be a little naive to think of it as a coincidence that a lot of these major artists are all doing the same thing. I recently found out also that the artist Juice WRLD was apparently heavily influenced by Future to get on drugs. That's a direct correlation, right? That's a shame that happened, and then he ended up losing his life as a result of this. He mentions how the evidence is normally science, so he wants to use science to show that people are being controlled by music. Well, Nick, scientific studies have shown that music has a large influence on a person's overall being, right? He talks about energies and all that. That's what happens when you start to hyper spiritualize, right? You get into this new age kind of mentality. The title of this episode was called Truth on Trial. Truth was on trial 2,000 years ago when Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? Jesus answers that question early on in the Gospel of John, right? John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. There is a war on truth, but be encouraged. We know how the story ends. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.